Selling your shine, mastering the gold and silver bullion sellback process. Hi everyone and welcome to Ainslie Insights, brought to you by Ainslie.com.au, the home of Ainslie Bullion, Ainslie Crypto, Ainslie Wealth and the Gold and Silver Standard. Be sure to have a look. Today, welcome back Bailey, who's chosen the topic today. He wanted to speak to people about something he gets asked all the time. People come in and say, look, we know how to buy it from you. That's pretty straightforward. We know to buy stuff, but when we want to sell it back, that's something we're not quite comfortable with. We don't understand how that works. So it was a great idea, I think, to come and speak to people about that today. How are you going today, Bailey?
Really good, Chris. Thanks for having me on again.
It's something you get all the time, isn't it? Like people just want to know, I suppose, have that confidence that, oh yeah, I've bought it. I get that you're happy to sell it to me, but are you happy to buy it back? Do you want to start us off just maybe stepping us through what that looks like for a customer, but maybe a first time customer who's coming in and really wants to understand that process? What do you usually say?
Well, I think you nailed it there with comfortability and confidence there. A lot of people who buy, as you said, we're happy to take your money, but are we happy to give you money back? So that's such an important question that I think a lot of people should ask. You know, if you're someone obviously watching from Australia, but if you're watching from overseas and you're dealing with your local dealer, or you're going through the private market, it's always an important thing to know. Depth of liquidity is a very important thing to know. Is can you actually get money back for your investment, particularly when you're dealing with physical metals? So I think the process for selling should be a question that everyone should ask anyone they're dealing with when they first start buying, of course. So to walk you through how that would work a little bit from our perspective, we try and make it as simple as possible. We really try to replicate just buying in reverse. We're just buying off you. You're just bringing it to us. That's as simple as we try to make it. Now, putting it literally, you'd come on in to our store. Now, we do have some security measures to get through given the nature of what we do. So you will need to provide some ID. Once you get through the doors, you'll sit with a consultant. Can shut the door if you wish and have a bit more of a private consultation. We'll have a look at what you've got, bring it down to the inventory team who will test the purity of the metal. You'll be quoted a price, and then, of course, you can be paid in cash or bank transfer or even swap over to cryptocurrencies. So that is it, very high level. It's really just a matter of bringing it in, putting it on our table, and we go from there. So what we deal in, though, is if you're coming into Ainslie Bullion, it does have to be bullion. And we've spoken about this before on previous episodes, and all the information is online. The items that you sell back to us have to be classified as bullion. So they have to have a weight and a brand and a purity. We don't buy back various numismatic coins or collectible items unless they've got that on there. There are a lot of places out there that do that, but your local bullion dealer will probably have a slightly lower tolerance for that wider variety, because we do just want that investment grade bullion. So that's really important to know first off the bat.
Yeah, that's a really good tip, I think, for people. It's not about jewelry. It's not about all those other variations. It really is bullion. And as you said, you've pointed that out in the past. It's very specific and relevant for the investment side. It's something people probably need to consider when they're buying as well. But you've said what that might look like coming in store. Are there ways that people could do that without coming in? Can they post the items in? I mean, I think people generally get a bit anxious about the concept of wrapping something up in a post and in the post sending it off on its way and hoping that it gets to the other end. Talk us through that process, because I think that is appealing for a lot of people, but they probably are a little bit anxious about it.
Yeah, absolutely, and of course there are limits to that, dollar limits. We would recommend nothing too high, and of course when you ring and speak to a consultant, they can give you the specifics around that and whether or not you should break up the parcel or how you should do that. But of course we have people, particularly even just in Queensland, who might be central Queensland, who can't drive, just pop in the ute and drive the 7-hour trip into Brisbane. So we do actually get this quite a lot. People will post it up. So we have a very specific set of instructions that we mail out to those customers. You have to do it the exact way that we say. You have to package it the exact same way we say. You have to provide evidence of that, wrap it all up, take a photo of that, and then we actually cover the insurance for that. So you ship that off to us, and once it arrives, the only drawback to that, though, is we can't pay you on a promise that you've sent it. We can only pay you once the metal arrives, and as I said, has been tested, has been checked for validity, and so forth. So you are subject to a bit of price volatility there, which in the past, when I first started with the company, we would usually sort of shrug and go, it's not really going to move too much in a day or two. These days, you are maybe subject to some differences in the price there. So that's one of your drawbacks. But of course, that is, I suppose, just a reality of if you are really far away. But I will say that, of course, over in the time that I've been with the company, we have opened up two additional branches, one in the Gold Coast and one in Melbourne. So we are becoming more cognizant of, expanding where we are physically, so that people do have that ability to come and not only buy, but also make it easier to actually give us the product back and sell it back to us.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, of course, you've got the physical ability of that, but it really is interesting that we don't have any issues with the posts either. Like, if people follow those instructions, as you said, it's insured, so that's great. I think people probably can get past that anxiety if they ring up, speak to someone, follow those instructions. It is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and I would argue that the instructions are very comprehensive. And given the value of what you're likely to be working with, we find that most customers follow them to a T, so because
Yeah.
they don't want any issues. So as long as you do that, there shouldn't be any issues. But of course, depending on the value, and depending on, we look at the price of gold and silver as of recording this video, it's done quite well. I imagine most people who have bought any time before probably the last 3 weeks is probably very happy. So for a lot of those people who are dealing with larger amounts of metal, it can honestly be cheaper just to take a day off work, make that drive, or catch a cheap flight, which sort of sounds a little sort of over the top. But when you're talking, kilos of gold and heavy amounts of silver, this is just the
Mm.
reality of dealing with physical metal that you hold and you own. So obviously, for those coming into the business, selling storage that they have is much easier. Email, phone call. So we do have those options as well, and that's something that people need to consider when they buy. Which is why I think that the question about how do I sell is a really important one to ask before you buy. Which is, I suppose, why we're just sitting here discussing it now.
And I want to dig a little bit more into that because you raised the point there about storage. There are ways that people can do it where they don't have to come in at all, if they are holding the metal with us in storage, or at least they can engage with the vault potentially if they want to store it there. Can you talk us through some of those different storage options and how it solves that problem for people who might not be comfortable, even though we talked about the insurance and said it's there, or might not want to? And it does sound ridiculous to say jump on a plane, but we have lots of people who do
Yeah,
that.
lots
When they're
lots who do that.
talking big dollar value, they physically make the trip. So, but there's ways around that. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, and I think that is one of the benefits of storage is that if you're someone who's an existing storage customer with Ainslie, and it's quite obvious what the benefit there is. You can simply email us at any time, and obviously again there are checks in place to make sure that you are who we're speaking to. All of everything's operating above board, and then all we need is some bank details, and then we can pay you the money usually the exact same day. So by the end of the day, if you've made that request, depending on the demand of customers on that day, we've had a few crazy days over the last few weeks, but that usually happens by the end of the day. You'll see, if not the money in your account, but the transfer initiated. So that's if we manage the storage. Now, if you are with a customer of either the Melbourne Vault or the Reserve Vault and your goods are stored there, that is a separate company to us in both of those instances, a completely different entity, completely privately owned and operated, which is what you want when your goods are stored there. But there are some drawbacks there. We do not have access to those safes. So, uh, for good reason, you are the person holding that metal. You are the person holding that key. So you do have to think when you are buying whether you're going into Reserve Vault or the Melbourne Vault, or whether Ainslie is managing the storage for you. That's something you have to consider, as you will need to make that trip. You will need to make that appointment with that respective vault, and then you will have to take the metal out. Now, what we do to be the convenient middleman in that is we do have a good relationship with the vaults. So you simply need to make the appointment. You don't need to bring your, maybe many thousands of dollars worth of gold or many kilos worth of silver
Yep.
across town to Ainslie. We do have a good relationship with the vault. The staff there are all trained in how to test and verify the metal, the SKUs. They coordinate with us. So you can just do it in one go. You can just go to your vault, pull it out. Those guys there will assess it, let us know, and then, as I said, we will generate that purchase order, and you will be paid within the 24 hours. So you still will need to come to Brisbane or Melbourne in that regard, but you won't need to sort of wander across town, sort of defeating the purpose of, I suppose, not having to wander around town with it. So.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. There's certainly plenty of options you've given people there, but the other question we probably get a lot around this is, how do you figure out what you're going to pay me? What's the buyback price? How does that work? Because people might be familiar with the spot price that's advertised everywhere. They're not necessarily familiar with the buyback price. So if you want to maybe talk a little bit about that side of it as well, because I think that's probably the other bit beside the point of how do I get it to you and what's that process look like. The price is a big one for a lot of people.
Yeah, of course. Now, what I'll say about buying back metal through Ainslie specifically is we buy back at a percentage below spot. Now, I'm not going to be quoted on a percentage on the video because it can change over time, so I don't want to be held to it. But it's only a few percent for each metal, respectively, below. Now, what's more important to understand is when you buy metal from us, the percentage you pay above that spot price depends on a number of factors: cost, the cost to produce, I should say, the size of the metal, whether it's come from a foreign mint, and a lot of other factors. When we buy back at the same percentage below, regardless of what type it is.
Hmm.
Which is why I think it's really important to understand the sellback process before you buy, because you may pay a much higher premium for a shiny, rare collectible coin over, say, a 5 kilo silver bar. But when you sell back 5 kilos of those shiny coins and you sell back one 5 kilo silver bar, you're going to get the exact same amount of money. So these are the things you need to know before you buy, because that may change your buying decision. And I've had many conversations with customers on that sheer fact when they do the math on the difference of not how much, I suppose, they're being quote unquote charged beyond the premium for a 5 kilo bar to those 5 kilos of coins, but they look at it as, what does the silver spot price need to get to, and how long do I think that's going to happen before I realize a break even on that? Um, the reason that we do it that way, a lot of customers will ask, why do you not buy back at spot price? There are a number of reasons. The first is, of course, it is a business. It's commercially viable for us to do it that way. The second reason is because Ainslie doesn't hold a position. We hedge everything, and there is a cost in that, whether when the gold is going out and when it's coming in. And the third reason is because a lot of the time, the stuff that we get back in may not necessarily be something that goes straight back up on the shelf and goes out. We're really happy when it is, but more often than not, a lot of that stuff does need to get re-poured and melted and turned back into a nicer option that maybe is a bit more easy to make a customer happy with. Put it that way. So there are costs involved with that too. So we do just standardize it to keep it simple, so everyone knows what they're getting into when they purchase.
Yeah, and that really valuable information, because people might not have thought about all of that and how it all fits together. To wrap this up, I have another question I was thinking about. When you think about your experience, I mean, you've been there for quite a while. You have seen lots of different customers approach their buying and selling of metal in lots of different ways. What do you think would be your number one bit of advice you would give to people on trying to time the market potentially, or trying to get the maximum value for their sell? Because obviously when people are buying, well, not everyone, but most people, when they're buying for an end date sell or a certain amount of profit they want to make or whatever it is. From your history there, from what you've seen, what you spoke to people about, what's your advice to them in terms of that maximizing value?
Advice to maximizing value. Well, I mean, it's a hard one to give one blanket advice because everyone's situation is different. Some people need to sell, they don't want to sell. Some
Right.
people want to sell, but then they don't need to sell. So I think not getting too emotional about price movements and sticking to your original plan. As I keep saying, as sort of a common theme through this Insights episode, is it's really good to understand how to sell when you buy. Because I think having an exit strategy is almost as important, if not more important, in my experience, than having an
Right.
entry strategy. So, if to put a sort of a blanket bit of advice, the best thing I can understand is know when you want to sell, know why you want to sell, and then don't be emotional about that. So, we've seen a lot of people taking profit over this last run. Some of them bought 40 years ago and are very, 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 very happy because they've held that whole time through all the raises in silver in 2011 and the drops, in 2020, the raises and the drops, and they've held until now because of this massive move. And we have people selling who bought 3 years ago who are very happy because it was meant to be a longer term hold. But they said, if all these projections are true and we do get a breakout move, I'll sell. So I think the only people who are going to be unhappy are the ones who don't stick to their plan. So I think have an exit strategy when you have your entry strategy, and keep informed. And if the strategy changes, sure, you have to be flexible, but still don't let emotion be the thing purely that changes that strategy.
That's really solid advice, I think, for people watching. And it's really helpful to have your sort of insight into that because you're out there working with this all the time, speaking to people about it all the time. So you can accumulate all the little bits of knowledge from all those people over that time. It is really valuable. Look, thank you as always for your deep dive on that. It's helpful for people to understand what actually goes on and how the process actually works in a little bit more detail, because it can be a little bit intimidating, a little bit scary for people who are starting out. So really appreciate your work on that, Bailey.
No, no worries. It was scary for me the first time too. So, so I completely understand, and happy to come on and have a chat anytime.
Thank you everyone for watching. We'll chat again soon.